The court said, and the prosecution can call its next.
Mr. Horton said, the government calls Karin Maistrello.
The law clerk said, please raise your right hand.
Witness sworn.
The law clerk said, you may be seated.
The court said, please state your name and spell it.
The witness said, Karin Maistrello. Karin Maistrello.
The court said, you may inquire.
Mr. Horton said, thank you, Your Honor.
Karin Maistrello, called as a witness by the government, having been duly sworn, testified as follows. Direct examination. By Mr. Horton.
Good morning, Ms. Maistrello.
Good morning.
What state do you live in?
New Jersey.
What languages do you speak?
English, German, Italian, French, Spanish, and Chinese.
And where do you currently work?
I work for Google.
Turning back to 2018, who did you work for then?
I was an employee of Golden Spring.
Anne.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, I'm sorry. We're having trouble hearing the witness.
The court said, if you draw the microphone closer to you and speak up.
The witness said, of course, yes.
Who is Gov't?
He was my boss at Golden Spring.
And how long did you work for Gov't?
From 2018 to 2020.
What are other names, Ms. Maistrello, if any, does Gov't use?
Miles Kwok.
Ms. Schrofa said, Objection to the form of the question, Your Honor.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
Gwengui. I used to call him boss.
Could you please spell Gov't?
Guowengui.
You said Gov't also goes by Miles Kwok. Could you spell Kwok?
Kwok.
Ms. Maistrello, who is Ho Wan Kwok?
Gwengui.
When you worked for Miles Gua, what did you call him?
I used to call him boss, in Chinese.
Do you see boss here in the courtroom today?
Yes, I do.
Could you please point him out and identify him by something he's wearing?
He's wearing glasses and a blue suit, with a blue tie.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, I'll stipulate that she's identified Mr. Miles Gua.
The court said, all righty.
Ms. Maistrello, during the 2 years you worked for boss, how many days a week did you work for him?
It varied. Sometimes it was 6, sometimes it was 7.
And during those 6 or 7 days a week working for boss, what were your hours like?
Ms. Schrofa said, Objection to the leading and the form of the question.
The court said, overruled. You may answer. You may answer.
It depended on the work that we had to do, so usually I would be in the office quite early, around 8. All the way until 8 p.m. If I had any other projects, it could be as early as 4 a.m. or as late as midnight. It depended.
And how much of that time, Ms. Maistrello, did you spend with boss?
Every day.
And when you worked with boss, how, if at all, did you communicate with him?
All day long in one way or another.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please pull up for the witness what's been marked as GX 141? Ms. Maistrello, what is this?
It's a photo.
And what is it a photo of?
There are 2 people in the photo. One is me and one is boss.
Mr. Horton said, Government offers Government Exhibit 141.
Ms. Schrofa said, No objection, Your Honor.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit 141 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please publish it? About when was this photo taken, Ms. Maistrello?
This photo was taken in 2018.
And when did you start working for boss?
In 2018.
Was there a time that you enjoyed working for boss, Ms. Maistrello?
Yes.
And what did you enjoy about working for him?
It was definitely very challenging. No day was alike. You definitely had to learn a lot and do it quickly.
Ms. Maistrello, what were the rule of law organizations?
Rule of Law Society and Rule of Law Foundation were 2 non-profit organizations that were founded in 2018. In November of 2018, that had the mission of helping Chinese people.
And who founded the Rule of Law organizations in 2018?
Boss did.
What title, if any, did you have at Rule of Law, Ms. Maistrello?
I was president and treasurer of Rule of Law Society.
Who gave you those titles at Rule of Law?
Boss did.
As president and treasurer of the Rule of Law Society, Ms. Maistrello, were you in charge of that organization?
No, I wasn't.
Who was in charge of the Rule of Law organizations?
Boss was.
You said the purpose was to help people in China. What, if anything, did Rule of Law do to help people in China?
While I was there, nothing.
We'll come back to that.
Ms. Shrofa said, "Objection to the commentary."
The court said, "You may continue."
Ms. Maistrello, where did you work before you worked for Boss?
In China.
And who did you work for in China?
I worked at an oil company, and I was also teaching at university.
Who owned the oil company you worked for in China?
In theory, the company was privately owned, but as everything in China, it was government-owned and backed.
And how long were you working in China?
5 years.
When did you move to the United States?
In 2017.
How did you first hear about the opportunity to work for Gov't?
I was contacted directly by a recruiter.
Who was that recruiter?
His name is Steve Weber.
And after you first heard about the opportunity to work for Gov't from Steve Weber, who did you speak with next?
He arranged a meeting, so a first interview, where I met Yvette Wang.
Who is Yvette Wang?
At the time she introduced herself as Boss's assistant.
And where did she introduce herself to you?
We met for our interview at the Plaza Hotel.
Mr. Horton said, "Ms. Loftus, can you please display for Ms. Maistrello what's been marked as Government Exhibit 102? Ms. Maistrello, what is Government Exhibit 102?
It's a photo.
Who or what is it a photo of?
Yvette.
Mr. Horton said, "Your Honor, Government offers Government Exhibit 102.
Ms. Shrofa said, "No objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "It is admitted."
Government's Exhibit 102 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, "Please publish it, Ms. Loftus." Thank you.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Maistrello, in your interview with Yvette Wang, what, if anything, did she call Gov't?
In that interview she called him the principal.
And what questions did Yvette ask you in that interview to work for the principal?
She asked me a few personal questions, so she asked questions about my family. She asked whether I was married, I had kids. She also asked me if I had any connection to the CCP, so to the party.
How did you respond to Yvette Wang's question whether you had any connections to the CCP?
I told her that I knew people who were party members, but that was all of it.
How did Yvette Wang respond to that?
Ms. Shrofa said, "Objection as to the hearsay."
The court said, "Sustained."
What, if anything, was Yvette's reaction when you said you had connections to CCP members?
The court said, "So you need to repeat her words."
Mr. Horton said, "Can I have one moment, Your Honor?"
The court said yes.
Mr. Horton said, "Thank you, Your Honor." Ms. Maistrello, after Yvette Wang interviewed you for the job with Boss, what happened next?
I got a call from Steve Weber, who told me that the interview went well and he called me in for another interview.
And with whom was that next interview?
That was with Boss.
Mr. Horton said, "Ms. Loftus, can you please take down the exhibit?" Thank you. Where did Boss interview you?
At his home.
Where was his home?
The Sherry Netherland.
What is the Sherry Netherland?
The Sherry Netherland is a luxury residential hotel that overlooks Central Park.
Mr. Horton said, "Ms. Loftus, can you please display for the witness what's been marked as Government Exhibit 130? Ms. Maistrello, what is Government Exhibit 130?
It's a photo.
What is it a photo of?
The Sherry Netherland.
Mr. Horton said, "Government would offer Government Exhibit 130.
Ms. Shrofa said, "I have no objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "It is admitted."
Government's Exhibit 130 received in evidence.
Ms. Maistrello, where is the Sherry Netherland located?
It's between 57th and 5th Avenue.
And where in the Sherry did boss interview you?
Do you mean which room?
Where in the building was your interview? Where did it take place?
On the 18th floor.
What's on the 18th floor of the Sherry?
That was his home.
Who met you when you arrived for the interview with boss?
Yvette did.
What happened first when Yvette met you at boss's apartment?
When I first arrived, she showed me around a little bit, just one area of the penthouse. And then we waited for boss.
Please describe to the jury what that part of boss's penthouse looked like.
That specific part had various different rooms, so you can imagine like a corridor, a dining area, a tea room, a library, a gym, a movie room, and a piano room.
And what happened after Yvette showed you around boss's penthouse?
We sat down and we waited for him.
What happened next?
He arrived.
And did boss interview you when he arrived?
Yes, he did.
What happened after your interview with boss that day?
I went home, and I believe I received an offer on the same night.
Did you accept that offer?
I did.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please show the witness what's marked as GXBR 871? You can enlarge it just a little bit. Ms. Loftus. Thank you. Ms. Maistrello, what is this document?
This is the offer letter I received.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor, the government would offer GXBR 871.
Ms. Strofa said, "No objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "It is admitted."
Government's Exhibit BR 871 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, "Could you please publish it, Ms. Loftus?"
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Maistrello, the top of your accepted job offer says Golden Spring, New York. What was Golden Spring? New York?
Golden Spring was my employer.
What was the business of Golden Spring, New York?
It was presented to me on my very first day as an asset management company.
In your 2 years of working for boss, what, if anything, did you come to understand Golden Spring did?
Golden Spring was a company that took care of boss's wishes and desires. So it was the company through which we would purchase things for boss, or take care of his things.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you scroll down towards the bottom of this page, please? Thank you. Ms. Maistrello, there's a signature on the page over a line that says Yvette Wong, COO, Golden Spring, New York. What is COO?
Chief Operating Officer.
When you worked for boss, how often, if ever, did you work with Yvette?
Every day.
And who did Yvette work for?
Golden Spring.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, can you please show the witness what's been marked as Government Exhibit UK 723? Ms. Maistrello, what is this?
It's a photo.
And who is it a photo of?
There are 4 people in the photo. Boss is one of them, his wife, daughter.
Ms. Strofa said, "Objection, Your Honor."
The court said, "If you'll step up."
Continued on next page. At the sidebar.
The court said, "What's the objection?"
Ms. Strofa said, "There's no relevance to the photo. She didn't take the photo. She doesn't know. There's no indication when this photo was taken. We don't know the year. We don't know how she would know anything about this photo. The government is using the photo to introduce people they want to put into evidence. It has no relevance to the testimony."
The court said, "Go ahead."
Mr. Horton said, so the people in the photo, as Ms. Maistrello is about to establish, that she can recognize them from the photo. They're people who will feature in this case. They're already featured in this case. You don't have to take a photo to be able to authenticate it. It's black letter authentication. And I'm laying a foundation. I think she's almost there. If she's not there already, I'd ask to have the photo admitted.
Ms. Strofa said, "What's the relevance of the photo?" "There's no relevance of the photograph to this witness's testimony." She's not going to testify about any.
The court said. He has said that these individuals will play a part in the prosecution's case.
Ms. Schrofa said, right, but not any part of her testimony. So it may be down the road. If she wants, so that's my first objection, Your Honor. I didn't object to the photo of Yvette because she's going to testify about Yvette. That's relevant because it pertains to some part of her testimony. She's not going to testify about any of these people.
The court said. She can authenticate the photo by identifying these individuals. Let's see if she does. Overruled.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, while we're at the sidebar, though, I did have an objection to the government lawyer's constant looping of facts into each question. So each question adds in a response from the witness instead of just simply asking the next question. There are facts baked in. The looping theory of asking questions, I object to it. And number 2, Your Honor. It's improper to refer to the defendant as boss by the government. If she wants to use that in the answer, that's one thing. But to perpetuate that by asking the question and framing it as boss, I object to that as well.
The court said, all right, so you'll call him Mr. Gov't. I have overruled your objections with respect to the form of the question.
Ms. Schrofa said, thank you.
The court said, let's go back.
Continued on next page. In open court.
The court said, you may continue.
By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Maistrello, do you recognize the people in this photograph?
I do.
Mr. Horton said, government would move to offer Government Exhibit UK 723.
The court said, she needs to identify the individuals.
Mr. Horton said, oh, okay. Can you identify, can you say who the people are in the photograph, left to right?
Yes. Boss, his wife, Yvette, and their daughter.
Mr. Horton said, government offers Government Exhibit UK 723.
The court said, it is admitted.
Government's Exhibit UK 723 received in evidence.
Mr. Horton said, please publish it, Ms. Loftus. Ms. Maistrello, where was this photograph taken?
In the dining room of the Sherry.
Turning back to Yvette Wong, what exactly did Yvette do for Mr. Gov't?
Everything.
What do you mean by everything?
She was his right hand.
Ms. Schrofa said, Your Honor, I apologize, but I am having trouble hearing the witness. If you could just ask for her voice to be.
The court said, so you can bring the microphone closer and also speak up.
The witness said, I'll try, Your Honor. By Mr. Horton.
Ms. Maistrello, you said that Yvette Wong did everything for the defendant, was his right-hand person. What do you mean by that?
Ms. Schrofa said, objection to the testifying by the government, Your Honor.
The court said, overruled. You may answer.
So I said that she was his right hand.
And my question is, what exactly did that entail?
From payments to giving directions to the staff.
And who else besides Mr. Gov't, if anybody, did Yvette Wong report to?
Only to boss.
Mr. Horton said, Ms. Loftus, you can please take the picture down. By the way, Ms. Maistrello, when you worked for the defendant, where did you work?
Our office was located at 800 Fifth Avenue.
And where else, if anywhere, did you work for Mr. Gov't?
In 2019, we moved to another office on Lexington and, whenever it was needed, in his home.
The court said, all righty. It's now 11:30, and so we're going to take our half-hour break. Members of the jury, remember that you're not permitted to discuss the case amongst yourselves. Don't permit anyone to discuss it in your presence. We will start promptly at noon. Ma'am, you may step down. But do not discuss the case.
Continued on next page. Jury not present.
The court said, Counsel, is there anything before we return?
Mr. Horton said, yes, Your Honor. Just one matter the government wishes to raise for efficiency's sake. There was an objection early in Ms. Maistrello's testimony about hearsay with respect to a statement that Yvette Wong made. Yvette Wong is a co-conspirator of Miles Gov't. The court knows she was charged with Miles Gov't. The testimony that was just elicited made clear that she was also an agent of Miles Gov't. I believe Ms. Maistrello described her as doing everything for him and his right hand. So we submit that statements made by Yvette Wong in her capacity as Miles Gua's agent and in her capacity as a co-conspirator in this case are admissible.
Ms. Strofa said, Your Honor, I don't believe the government has shown the existence. I can't see the court. I apologize. But I don't believe that the government has met its burden under the hearsay rules of having established a conspiracy with Ms. Yvette Wang and Miles Gua. There may have been an employer-employee relationship that they've established so far, but there is no indication that they've established a co-conspiratorial agreement between those two individuals. Additionally, Your Honor, the evidence that the government was trying to elicit, and I apologize if I have this wrong, but I believe there were questions about what she was asked during an employment interview, which certainly are not in furtherance of a conspiracy. They are employment-related questions. Finally, Your Honor, even if the government is said to have established a conspiracy here, there is no relevance to what interview questions she is asked. The government has clearly established she got a job, and there's no allegation here that she got a job based on fraudulent pretenses. So, for all those reasons, Your Honor, I don't think that the government's argument is properly made. Thank you.
Mr. Horton said, Your Honor. There isn't a more paradigmatic agency situation than interviewing somebody to work for somebody else. Yvette Wong was there for Miles Gua to interview somebody who was hired to work directly with Miles Gua. If that's not agency, it doesn't exist.
Ms. Strofa said, She was not hired to work for Miles Gua. She was hired to work for Golden Spring.
The court said, One moment. Did Ms. Wong plead guilty to conspiracy?
Mr. Horton said, Yes.
The court said, All right. You may ask questions that elicit statements from Ms. Wong.
Mr. Horton said, Thank you.
The court said, We will reconvene at noon.
Lunch and recess.